we're going to go through my bracket so far. As you can see, it's not great, but let's just kind of run down what happened yesterday. And we'll run down what happened yesterday with the NCAA Tournament. It's obviously the greatest 4 days of the year right now, so, who doesn't love this time of year if you're a college basketball fan? But yeah, this greatest 4 days of the year. Day one was yesterday. The round of 64 kicked off. And let's just kind of run down all the results real quick. Starting up you can't really see it on my screen right now, but it's kind of obscured by me. You've got KU and Austin Peay. They played. KU thumped Austin Peay. Score is a little closer than the game actually was. They just kind of started playing around towards the end as the game just kind of got out of hand. KU looked really good. I think they're the most dominant team out there right now. They are number one seed for a good reason. They didn't have any problems with Austin Peay. They kicked them to the curb pretty easily. Moving on, the other half of that little pod, you had Colorado and UConn. UConn pulled the upset, kind of. I mean, 8-9 games don't really consider them an upset, really. Yeah. UConn got the win, 74-67, took care of Tad Boyle and his crew. Once again, well, we'll get to it a little bit, but the Pac-12, I don't think they're quite as good as people thought they were. West Coast, generally speaking, this year did not have many good teams, and Colorado certainly. I mean, they're not West Coast, but they're Pac-12. They were definitely overrated. I don't know how you get 6 teams in from that conference this year. It boggles my mind. But yeah, UConn. The other thing is don't bet against UConn in the tournament. Once they make it to the tournament, hey, all bets are off. It could be who knows what. Just because they've got Kevin Ollie and Jim Calhoun before him. UConn's got some tournament magic, man. I wouldn't be surprised to see that KU-UConn game be a pretty big dogfight. We'll see how it goes, but it sets up a pretty interesting matchup at next round's game with KU and UConn. Should be pretty good. We'll see how things shake out. Going down in the South region, you also had games yesterday. You had Arizona playing Wichita State. Wichita State got in through the play-in game. They were one of the last 4 in. They beat who did they beat? Oh, they beat Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt in Tuesday's game to make it into the field of 64. And last night they beat Archie Miller and his see-through shirt, which he sweated through. They beat them pretty handily. The final score was 65-55, but there was really no point in the game last night where you thought that Greg Marshall and his team were not in control of that game. Fred VanVleet, Ron Baker, the rest of that team, they handled their business pretty well last night, and they took Arizona down. They didn't really seem to have any problems with them. Arizona could not, even with Caleb Tarczewski, they just could not match up, couldn't figure out how to beat Wichita State. So Wichita State got a really good win. And then on the other half of that pod, you had Miami against Buffalo. That was a closer game than some would have thought. Miami's a really good team. Jim Larinaga has done a really nice job with a team with not a whole bunch of talent. I mean, they've got Angel Rodriguez, who transferred from K-State when Frank Martin left, and he's a fantastic player. But outside of him, they really don't have a whole bunch of anything. So just them being a 3 seed, them doing as well as they did in the ACC, it's pretty amazing. And I think they really overachieved this year so far. So they won. They beat Buffalo. Like I said, they had about a 10-point lead most of the game. It wasn't really ever in danger, but it was still closer than I thought it would be. And yeah, they got the win over Buffalo. And so that sets up a second round game, or a round of 32 game between Wichita State and Miami, which should be pretty good. We'll get to it a little bit, but yeah, I think Wichita State definitely has could get the upset there and make it to the Sweet 16. Moving over to the East, you've got UNC and Florida Gulf Coast, Dunk City, the Fighting Joe Dooleys. They came back. They won their opening round game on Tuesday, and they won the right to fight to play UNC. And UNC just kind of had their way with them. It was a close game in the first half. I think Florida Gulf Coast was only down 1 at half. It was like 40-41. But second half, UNC just proved too much. They're just too big inside. They just kind of had their way with Florida Gulf Coast in the second half once they kind of woke up. And it wasn't really it was kind of a no-doubter after the second half. And then the other half of that little pod, you have USC against Providence. In a thrilling game. I mean, that game was back and forth almost the entire game. Providence ends up with the win on not a last-second shot, but they had on their final possession. They made a nice little layup, and then USC inbounded the ball and then lost. Couldn't put up a half-court shot. So Providence gets a really good win. Chris Dunn moves on. Some people think he's one of the best. He is the best point guard in the country. My money's still on Tyler Ulis. I'm a little bit biased, though, but I still think Tyler Ulis is fantastic. I don't want anybody else leading my team other than Tyler Ulis. He is unbelievable. But yeah, Chris Dunn and the Providence Friars now get a chance to take on the Tar Heels on Saturday. So that should be a good matchup. We'll see how that goes. If Providence can shoot well, if they can hit threes, they can really cause some problems for UNC. Moving on down in the East Regional, Indiana played Chattanooga in a game that wasn't really close. Indiana shot the ball really well. I think they shot something like 65% from the field, which is unbelievable for a full game. Chattanooga didn't really play. They didn't put up any kind of defense. Indiana just kind of had their way with them and ran away with it. Yogi Ferrell stole Jamal Murray's bow and arrow, so there's a little bit of that going on. Oh well. But Indiana gets to the round of 32, and then that sets up a fun matchup on Saturday between Kentucky and Indiana because Kentucky decimated Stony Brook. Stony Brook, their big guy, Warney, had a really good game, like 23 points, 14 boards, something like that. But Kentucky's guards, Kentucky's bigs, just too much, just kind of wore them down. They played some really great defense. It was a very ugly game to watch in the first half, but Kentucky's defense was just smothering all night, and they really caused Stony Brook some problems. I don't think Stony Brook had seen that kind of length all year, and Kentucky just had their way with them. Just overmatched, which, like I said, this sets up a really awesome game. Kentucky, Indiana, it's an old rivalry. I think Indiana fans wanted it a lot more than Kentucky fans do, but I think Kentucky's gonna show the Hoosiers just who their boss is. It should be a fun match. Moving down, Moving down in the West, there was only one game over there, two games over there yesterday. You had Baylor and Yale. Yale got the huge upset over Baylor, and Torian, I can't remember his last name, but the one guy for Baylor had one of the best press conference answers of all time yesterday. It was pretty good. He just said, they asked him, how do they out-rebound you? He's like, well, you go up, put both hands on the ball, you bring it down, and that's a rebound. And yeah, I mean, it's good. It's yes. But yeah, Yale beat them. Yale played a really good game. Baylor seemed to be fighting with themselves in the huddle, so I'm sure there's some sort of mismanagement going on there. Hang on one second. This Kevin? Hey Tom, what's up? Just make sure that you click on that hex value. And yeah. Yep. All right, cool. Mm-hmm. yeah. Give Greg a card. But, I wouldn't do that. Just make a contractor. Like just make a UPN contract. I think there's already one in there. Just yeah, just assign that card. Yeah, just assign that card to that user. No problem. See ya. All right. Apologies. I had to take a work call. I am technically working right now. Anyway, so yeah, Baylor and Yale. Yale got the pretty big upset, so good for them. They get the right to face Duke, which really stinks because, okay, so Duke played a close game too. That was like a 2-point game at half on that one, and then Duke kind of got bailed out by the refs in the second half, which Duke's gonna do. So yeah, is what it is. But yeah, so Duke beat UNC Wilmington, and now that sets up a second round match or round of 32 match between Yale and Duke. And I'm really not happy with that. Duke got such an easy bracket this year. It's not even funny. It's not sour grapes. They just did get a really easy bracket. So that sets up, I think Baylor was probably the only team in that group in that region that could probably beat Duke. And so, just of course Baylor's the one that loses the first round and gets upset. So yeah, so now it's Yale and Duke in the round of 32. Go figure. Moving over to the Midwest, you had University of Virginia against Hampton. Virginia had no problems putting away Hampton. They move on to the second round. The other match, the 8-9 match in that region, Texas Tech and Butler, the Fighting Tubby Smiths against Butler. It was a back and forth game the entire time, and then just kind of like the last 5 minutes, I don't know what happened, but Tubby's team just kind of laid down and just died. And Butler got the win. Kudos to them. They get to play Virginia on Saturday. Should be a good game. I don't think Virginia's going to have too much problems with them. Butler's a good team, but Virginia's defense is just suffocating. I don't see Butler handling it very well. Moving on to the 5-12 in the Midwest region, you have Purdue and Arkansas Little Rock, another one of the big upsets of the day, 12 over the 5. Arkansas Little Rock went to double overtime with Purdue and then finally won it in double overtime. I think a really exciting game. I didn't think Purdue was going to have problems with a team like Arkansas Little Rock, but hey, March happens. And Arkansas Little Rock moves on. And then the other, they get to play Iowa State, who beat Iona. Iona was actually one of my upset picks, as you can kind of see here yesterday. So, it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. But, Iowa State's a good team. I just figured they'd come out cold and they wouldn't make it very far. And Iona, I watched them play in their championship game for their league. And I thought they looked like a pretty decent team, and I was wrong. Oh well. Then the 6-11 matchup, Seton Hall and Gonzaga is a final game of the night. The Zags put Seton Hall away. Once again, this game was never really close. Gonzaga controlled that whole game. Kyle Wiltjer and what's the kid's name? Sabonis. Both of them had fantastic games. Just shot the ball well, controlled tempo of the game, put Seton Hall away. I wasn't surprised by the result. It's one of the only West Coast teams I think will actually make some noise in March. I could see them getting to the Sweet 16, getting past Utah, who Utah beat the Fresno State Bulldogs in the round of 64. It wasn't really a close game. Utah just kind of had their way with them. Just there wasn't really a whole bunch to see in that game. It was just kind of ho hum. But it was a good game. Utah's got that big guy, the big senior, and he's a real beast down low. But it was a really good game, or it wasn't a good game. But it sets up a really intriguing matchup between Gonzaga and Utah, two West Coast teams that, West Coast. Two teams that should be pretty fun to watch in the second round, in the round of 32. So that's kind of a wrap-up of what happened yesterday. That kind of brings us into today's games. So let's run those down real quick. I'm just going to go through the South. Yeah, Maryland, South Dakota State. Maryland shouldn't have any problems with South Dakota State, but if Melo Tremble's not playing well, if their guards don't show up, South Dakota State is a good team. They could upset Maryland, but I don't think it's going to happen today. We'll see how things go. Give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry. And then you also have the 4-13 matchup is Cal and Hawaii. Cal and Hawaii is let's just say Cal lost one of their assistant coaches because of a sex scandal, basically trying to trade scoops for sex on with a local reporter. So he got let go, and then the scorer fractured his hand the other day, so he's out for the game. So it's gonna be a tough matchup for Cal. Cal does have dudes, but it's gonna be a real tough game. It's going to be a real tough game for Cal without their leading scorer. So we'll see how things go. I'm not terribly concerned for Hawaii in this one with Cal's leading scorer. I think Hawaii should actually get the upset and move on to face Maryland in the round of 32. Moving on, you've got Iowa Temple. Iowa Temple should be a good game. I think the Hawkeyes have been a really good team. They've been a top 10 most of the year. It just kind of faded down the stretch. I think Iowa still pulls out the win over Temple. Temple hasn't really shown me anything all year to really say that they really belong in the tournament. So I think Iowa gets the win here. And then the 2-15 matchup, Nova and UNC Asheville. It might be a close game, but I think Villanova gets things done, and then they choke in round 2 or in the round of 32 against Iowa. So you see Villanova against Iowa, round of 32. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that plays out. Then over in the East, you've got Notre Dame and Michigan. Michigan won on Tuesday night. They beat Tulsa, a really terrible Tulsa team. So I think Notre Dame takes care of business. I think Notre Dame beats them and gets to move on to the round of 32. Mike Bray's a good coach. I think he's got the horses to beat Michigan. I don't think Michigan's a very good team. I don't know how they got into the field in the first place. West Virginia and Stephen F. Austin are the other game in that little pod. You've got number 3 West Virginia and Huggy Bear has them playing really well, as he always does. I think Bob Huggins has that team rolling. Devin Williams is one of the best players in the country, and I think their defense is just too much for Stephen F. Austin. Now, that being said, if Stephen F. Austin can shoot threes over West Virginia's defense, then all bets are off, because West Virginia can't score sometimes. They can go absolutely ice cold. So I could see Stephen F. Austin getting an upset in that case. But I like West Virginia to win that game. Moving on in the East, you got the 7-seed Wisconsin against 10-seed Pitt. I think Wisconsin falls to Pitt. Jamie Dixon's crew probably just a little more overpowering. I'm not sold on the Big Ten this year. I think Michigan State is the dominant team from that conference, but outside of them, I just don't see any real contenders. Especially with Purdue going out yesterday to Arkansas Little Rock. And then you've got the 2-15 Xavier against Weber State. Xavier rolls. They're a really good team. I don't think anybody's watched them this year, but they are a very good team, very athletic, very fast-paced team. They will surprise a lot of people, I think, this year. Excuse me. So moving on in the West, you got Oregon against Holy Cross. I think Oregon wins that game. Might be a little closer than some people think, but I still think it's a pretty good matchup. Oregon wins that game. And then the 8-9 in that region is St. Joe's and Cincinnati. I think St. Joe's wins that game. St. Joe's they're a good team. Cincinnati's good too, but I just don't think the matchup is very good for Cincinnati's chances there. Moving on down, you got the 6 seed Texas against 11 Northern Iowa. I like Shaka Smart. I like what Shaka Smart's done in his first year down at Texas. But is it his first year? I think it's his first year. First or second year? I can't remember. I think it's his first year. But yeah, it's his first year. There's Northern Iowa magic in the tournament. At least there has been in years past. So I could see Northern Iowa getting that game. We'll see how things kind of play out. But I like Northern Iowa in that game. But it wouldn't surprise me if Shaka Smart brings that team to play, and we'll see where things go. Kid Ridley might be too much for a team like UNI down low. We'll see how things go. Then you've got the 3 against 14 Texas A&M against Green Bay. Texas A&M's a really good team, man. They took my Kentucky squad to the brink twice, beat them once at home, and went to OT on the road with them, or not on the. Well, it was basically a road game in the SEC tournament. They should be able to put away Green Bay pretty easily. But at the same time, I don't want to just say it's a foregone conclusion because wacky things happen in March. But I think Texas A&M handles Green Bay pretty handily. Handles them handily. Yeah, great. And the other thing, moving on, you've got Oregon and VCU. The 7 against the 10. I think VCU gets things done. I think VCU beats Oregon State once again. A really weak Pac-12 this year. West Coast teams outside of Gonzaga, Utah, Oregon. Even Oregon, I think, is pretty weak. But yeah, I think VCU gets the win over them. The Beavers really didn't show me much during the year, so I'm not putting much faith in them. And then I've got the 2 over the 15 in the final game for that region. Oklahoma over CSU Bakersfield. Oklahoma's a really good team. Buddy Hield is one of the best players in the country. First team All-American in my book. I think Buddy Hield and the Sooners get things done and move on to play VCU on Sunday. And then there's only 2 games in the Midwest today. Looks like it's Dayton and Syracuse. The 7 against the 10. Syracuse barely made it into the field. I'm not sold on Syracuse this year. Like they're a long team. Boeheim plays that zone. The zone could cause some problems, but Archie Miller, Sean Miller's brother, is a coach at Dayton. He's a really good coach, really smart coach. I don't think the zone's going to cause his team problems at all. I think Dayton beats Syracuse pretty badly in probably one of the only big romps of the day. I think it's going to be kind of surprising how much that game is lopsided. But yeah, I think I take Archie Miller's squad over Syracuse there. And then the final slate on the day is Michigan State and Middle Tennessee. And Michigan State, I think, has no problem with Middle Tennessee. They move on to face Dayton in the round of 32. Middle Tennessee, I'm sure they're great, but Michigan State is one of the most dominant teams in the country right now. It's them in Kansas and North Carolina and Kentucky. Those 4 teams are playing the best right now. You don't want to see any one of those 4 teams if you're anybody else. And yeah, that kind of sets up the day's action. We'll see how things play out. We'll kind of check in on this tomorrow morning, see where things go once we get to the round of 32. So yeah, check it out. If you want to subscribe, my channel is PPC007. I also got a Twitch channel, Jack Burton 55 with a 0 for the O. Yeah, let me know what you think and subscribe if you like it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. This is Kevin Augsburger, a.k.a. Jack Burton.